Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video of myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a US politics and economics breaking news update. I have three completely separate things to talk to you about that each deserve their own little video, but I'm going to ram them into this one breaking news update. One of them is bad economic news. Two of them are outrageous. Unconstitutional. One is unconstitutional, arguably, and one is just outright corruption. We're going to start with the bad economics news for the US. It sure appears we're on the precipice of a significant financial downturn. What is this? Well, CNN, many people reporting very bad jobs news. Let's get into that.
And let's just review what we got, because as Rick said, very disappointing. It was a weak number. So this is private sector jobs. Total comes in negative. 32,000. And that was a surprise because economists were looking for an increase of 51,000. It's the biggest monthly drop since March 2023. Also, the revision was not good. August was revised down sharply. The month now showing, as you can see, or actually can't see, but August goes down to negative 3,000 compared to the initial read of 54,000. There's the August revision. So 2 weak months in a row. If you look, private sector payrolls have now dropped in 3 of the last 4 months, according to ADP. And if you look beneath the surface, you can see where the job losses were. Small and medium-sized businesses saw bigger declines than large businesses, which actually saw job growth. But guys, if you take the report and you compare it, some people say, oh, it's not really correlated with the government jobs report. Well, the reason I think that people are paying attention to it today is, first of all, we're not going to likely get that government jobs report on Friday, but also look at the correlation. I mean, the direction is in the right mode. Like they dip at the same time, they rise at the same time. I think it gives you a good sense, at the very least, of the trend on job growth. This is ADP private sector versus the traditional monthly jobs report that we get on Friday, where the market pays really close attention to. So I think it's a good indication that the labor market is softening and that employers are a little more cautious when it comes to hiring and even paying. Carl, in terms of compensation, job changer pay growth declined 6.6% from 7%.
Okay, so this is not looking good. Couple of months in a row. I don't think Biden had a single month of job losses at the ADP. Correct me if I'm wrong there. So this is pretty staggering. Last 3 out of the last 4 months, negative job growth from ADP. So it's not the BLS. It's not the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is kind of like a private version. But the BLS statistics are also bad as well, weren't they? So this is not good news. I'm arguing with someone in the threads at the moment who thinks that, everything Trump's doing is wonderful in terms of the economy, and I'm not sure that there's the evidence to support that. Now, just as a sidebar, this isn't a breaking news piece so much as, this came out possibly yesterday. So I've talked to you about how tariffs, across the board tariffs, are a bad idea. Strategic tariffs can work. The Industrial Revolution in the UK actually was contingent upon infant industry protectionism that the UK used. So, you can make tariffs work. But I think across the board tariffs on pretty much everything is going to be massively inflationary. They are just a tax on your consumer, either the importer or the distributor or the manufacturer or the transporter or the wholesaler or the shop or the consumer. Somewhere along the line of getting a widget from abroad, from your port to someone consuming something with the widget in it, you are taxing. Somewhere along that process, you are extracting the tariffs. They either pass the cost of the tariffs on from the importer onwards, or they sink. I say they, anyone in this process, either passes the cost on or part of the cost, or sinks the whole cost or part of the cost. And therefore, it's a tax on profits or a tax on consumers to the point where it's just inflationary. The price goes up. It is a tax. What we're seeing with farmers is that the trade war of these tariffs, involving these tariffs on Chinese goods, has meant that the Chinese are no longer buying soybeans. and they're starting to buy soybeans instead from Brazil and Argentina. And then the US farmers are not selling a single soybean to China. And this is massively affecting farmers. Now, Trump has come out and said the soybean farmers of our country are being hurt because China is for negotiating reasons only, not buying. Of course, what he's not saying, he's saying this is a negotiating problem. It's a negotiating problem because you put tariffs on and you started a trade war with China. So this is kind of a form of retaliation. But to think that it's nothing to do with you're not morally or causally responsible for this is kind of bizarre. We've made so much money on tariffs. Now, remember, their taxes on the American people in one way or another. So he is shouting about how wonderful it is that we've made so. Imagine you increased VAT, right? Or put a value added tax on or whatever. And you shout about how wonderful it is that you've raised all this money. Where the consumer should be looking at and say, yeah, that's wonderful, but you've taken that from me. That is a tax you've taken from me. So you're shouting about how wonderful it is you've made lots of extra money in the last 6 months or whatever. But that's my money type thing. You know, that would have been my money. You've taken that money from me, which is fair enough, but just at least tell us what it is, which is a tax. But he says we've made so much money on tariffs that we are going to take a small portion of that money and help the farmers. I will never let our farmers down. Sleepy Joe Biden didn't enforce our agreement with China, where they were going to purchase billions of dollars of our farm products, but soybeans in particular. It's all going to work out very well. All caps. I love our patriots, and every farmer is exactly that. I'll be meeting with President Xi of China in 4 weeks, and soybeans will be a major topic of discussion. Make soybeans and other row crops great again. Yeah, promise everything, deliver nothing, blame Biden. That is essentially what you're seeing from Donald Trump. Now, farmers are going bankrupt from Trump's reckless trade wars, says Republicans against Trump, and his plan, in 4 weeks he'll meet Xi and beg him to buy soybeans again. Now, there is a really interesting discussion around why is it that farmers still overwhelmingly support Trump? And I advise you go and read this very interesting in-depth article. It's a BBC in-depth article. US farmers are being squeezed, and it's testing their deep loyalty to Trump. So it talks about, you know, why farmers are so loyal to Trump, that kind of urban-rural divide, the promises, the delivery of certain things here and certain things there, and so on and so forth. And what I found the most interesting part of this big old article is why they keep supporting Trump, irrespective of the evidence against that support in terms of, you know, the harm that has been done. Trump 1.0, there was a trade war with China, and then he had to bail out farmers to the tune of 28 billion. He's the firefighter that claims all the plaudits and commendation for putting out the fire, but he was the one that started the fire. A case of selective blame attribution. For Nicholas Jacobs, a politics professor at Colby College, the author of The Rural Voter, there's a deeper reason at play. Quote, "It's easy for an outsider to ask, why the hell are you still with this guy?" He says, but you have to understand that across rural America, the move towards Republicans long predates Donald Trump. Starting in the 1980s, he says, rural Americans started to feel alienated and left behind while cities benefited from globalization and technological change. What he calls a rural identity formed based on a shared grievance and an opposition to urban liberals. I mean, this predates the 1980s. This is actually, if you read Jason Stanley, How Fascism Works, not saying this is anything to do with fascism, but it's the idea that the bucolic heartlands are, you know, part of the conservative base, and, you know, that's what you want to appeal to. And actually, you know, throughout time there are really interesting political divides. It's the same in the UK. This is why they say land doesn't vote. If you look at a map of the US, it's overwhelmingly red because those big rural areas vote Republican. Blue areas are tiny because they're really densely populated cities, and that's been the same for some time, right? And it's the same in the UK, except the colours are reversed. So Conservatives generally vote in rural areas for people generally vote in rural areas for the Conservatives, and so the map of the UK has traditionally been very blue with very small red areas, but actually the number of people that live in those small red areas can outstrip all the rest of the people who live in the big blue areas. Land doesn't vote is a famous saying. So the Republicans seemed like their natural champion, rural voters, that is, because they are in this big opposition to urban liberals. While he says that Democrats became the party of the elite, technocrats, so sort of experts and intellectuals, the well-educated, the urbane. Some repeat that sentiment at the state fair. Joan Maxwell, a dairy farmer from Davenport in Iowa, says that her area is too often viewed as flyover country. We are not looked at very positively for the most part from the media, she says. We've been called deplorables, uneducated, a reference to Hillary Clinton's description of half of Trump's supporters as a basket of deplorables. Ms. Maxwell added, a lot of times they ignore us or make fun of us. Professor Shepard of the University of Michigan believes there's another factor. In his view, America has become so polarized, with voters from both sides entrenched in their camps, that many are willing to forgive much more than they would previously, as long as it's a policy implemented by their own side. That, I think, is totally key, by the way. He calls this, quote, selective blame attribution. They might be really angry about some things that are happening, but they're reticent to blame Trump for them. This, and I'm sure that's true on both sides, get screwed over by a policy decision by your own guy, and you will not blame your own guy for doing that. So anyway, jobs are down. Trump is robbing Peter to pay Paul, and don't forget that he's also taking $20 billion out from the budget, I guess, to pay he's $20 billion of support for Argentina to get them out of an economic predicament, while Argentina are providing soybean replacements for American farmers to China. It's absolutely nuts, but that's what's going on with regard to tariffs and to some degree the economy. Now we're going to move on to the second piece of breaking news here, and this is absolutely outrageous. I'm not sure it's constitutional, but I'm sure there will be many people know. Some saying there's nothing in the Constitution that stops them from best part is how pointless all this is. Republicans have majorities in the House and Senate. There's nothing in the Constitution that stops them from passing their own appropriation bills with Republican-only votes. No need to act extra constitutionally with illegal. So the idea is this is illegal, but they didn't need to do this. Okay, what is this? So Russell Vought, who is Mr. Heritage Foundation Project 2025, one of the main authors of Project 2025, he's now the acting CFPB director and the OMB director. So he is right in the middle of the Trump administration. He's saying nearly $8 billion in Green New Scam funding. So the Green New Deal kind of funding to do with renewables and, I don't know, net zero funding to fuel the left's climate agenda is being cancelled. More info to come from @Energy. The projects are in the following states, and then he lists all the states that voted Democrat, right? And it's looking like the government is cutting funding to Democrat states. And that is arguably not constitutional, because I'm sure there's something in the Constitution that states that you can't use policy to essentially attack or disadvantage the other side. Simplistically speaking. So Armand Domalewski says, I mean, how are Democrats supposed to negotiate a budget deal with Republicans when the latter reserves the right to just unilaterally cancel spending they don't like? The White House is cutting funding to every state that did not vote for Donald Trump in 2024, an unprecedented combination of brazen pettiness and illegality. I don't know my initials here well enough, but I'm sure we've got California, Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan, New Hampshire, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Vermont, Washington State, New Jersey, so on and so forth, and a few there I would have to think about a little more. Is that Hawaii? Yes, Illinois. Oh dear, that is really, really worrying there. And here someone says the president can cancel congressionally mandated funding is going to go down as one of the worst Supreme Court decisions in American history. They just totally removed the power of the purse from Congress, stripping it of most of its power. And again, this could be seen to be in line with the unified executive theory, where it appears that without getting these things passed through Congress, the White House is unilaterally deciding things and cutting funding from states. This should be the purview of Congress. But I don't know if this is part of, these are executive orders. As this person says again, I have no idea, zero idea how any budget will be negotiated and how the government will ever reopen under these conditions. So of course, you've got a government shutdown, and at the same time, they are stopping funding to Democrat states. It's absolutely incredible. And the third bit of breaking news I have for you is this. This is absolutely staggering. This is a very good question from a reporter to Caroline Leavitt. We don't get enough of these. He's probably not going to be allowed back in the White House. But this is astonishing, the answer she gives.
Second thing, how did the White House decide that it is appropriate for Jared Kushner to be working on matters that involve Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia, 3 countries that combined have given him more than $2.5 billion for his investment firm?
So this is a really good point. So Jared Kushner, the son-in-law for Donald Trump, who used to be the envoy to the Middle East in Trump 1.0s, now doesn't have anything to do with the formally with the administration. But he suddenly ended up with billions of dollars that were paid to him by these countries, put into a kind of hedge fund or whatever it was. I forget the exact details, but he suddenly had loads of money, and people were like, why have you got all that money from the Middle East? And now, well, here's a question. Why is it appropriate for him to be working on matters? So he's obviously doing something to do with Qatar, UAE, and Saudi Arabia when he has received money directly from them. There's a massive conflict of interest here. And Caroline Leavitt's answer is,
I think it's frankly despicable that you're trying to suggest that it's inappropriate for Jared Kushner, who is widely respected around the world and has great trust in relationships with these critical partners in these countries, to strike a 20-point comprehensive detailed peace plan that no other administration would ever be able to achieve. And so
it must be involved in the peace plan then, Jared Kushner. But this is there's nothing wrong with this question. This is a good searching question. That she would call it despicable is I think completely irresponsible. And actually, we're going to come on to some more Qatar things that I think are even more insane. I mean, this is just a question that should be asked, that is answered, I think, poorly by Caroline Leavitt.
Jared is donating his energy and his time to our government, to the President of the United States, to secure world peace. And that is a very noble thing. And this is a peace plan that has not just been accepted by Israel, but it has been applauded by Muslim and Arab countries around the world. It has been applauded by European leaders around the world. Virtually everyone in the world is supportive of this plan that Jared Kushner offered his time to help put together alongside our special envoy Witkoff, the Vice President, the President of the United States, Secretary Rubio, and the President's entire national security team. We are very proud of that plan, and we hope Hamas will accept it because it will lead to a more peaceful and prosperous Middle East.
So someone says, I'm confused how it's despicable to ask that question. These are exactly the kinds of questions we have been begging reporters and TV hosts to ask. And you see when they do get asked, how sensitive they are about it. Much more of this, please. More crypto questions, Qatar, UAE, etc. Now, I just want to tie that up with this astonishing finding here, that is pretty incredible. But before we get to the astonishing, like, Article 5 Qatar thing, let's just go a little bit more into what we've just been listening to. Say the Trump administration is the most corrupt administration in American history doesn't begin to do justice to what's happening, says David from the former Bush speechwriter, I believe. The Trump administration is as corrupt as the most corrupt administrations in Russian or Nigerian history. So this is from the New York Times. As Steve Witkoff, President Trump's envoy to the Middle East, conducted delicate ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas this year, his son Alex was on another mission. He was quietly soliciting billions of dollars from some of the same governments whose representatives were involved in peace talks with his father. Alex Witkoff pitched Qatar, a mediator in the Gaza talks and a key US ally in the Middle East, on a planned investment fund focused on commercial real estate projects in the United States, according to a spokeswoman for Qatar's sovereign wealth fund. He later wooed prospective investors by telling them he had already secured pledges of billions of dollars from government-affiliated funds in Qatar, the United Arab Emirates and Kuwait, according to people familiar with the pitches who were not authorized to speak publicly. The real estate fund had the potential to yield hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue for the Witkoff Group, which Steve Witkoff founded in 1997. He remains a partial owner of the company after selling a portion of his stake this year. In other words, rather like the trip of Trump to Middle East, to Qatar and Saudi Arabia and whatnot, where he came back with a jet and golf clubs and building projects in the Middle East, he was just grifting off his position as president. We have Steve Witkoff, the envoy here, grifting and making money through his son, doing loads of stuff with the very people he's dealing with as the Middle East peace envoy. And then you've got, of course, Jared Kushner seemingly doing similarly. But this is where it gets nuts. So this has sort of come out in the last 24 hours. This is really something. Trump has signed an executive order basically pledging Article 5-esque security guarantees to Qatar. In other words, the American armed forces are now obligated to militarily support Qatar if Qatar is attacked. Why, might you wonder? Well, I wonder who's built a massive golf club, $5 billion building project in Qatar. Because I can see no other reason that this would happen. Section 2 commitment. A, the United States shall regard any armed attack on the territory, sovereignty or critical infrastructure of the state of Qatar as a threat to the peace and security of the United States. B, in the event of such an attack, the United States shall take all lawful and appropriate measures, including diplomatic, economic and, if necessary, military, to defend the interests of the United States and of the state of Qatar and to restore peace and stability. C, the Secretary of War, in coordination with the Secretary of State and the Director of National Intelligence, shall maintain joint contingency planning with the state of Qatar to ensure a rapid and coordinated response to any foreign aggression against the state of Qatar. D, the Secretary of State shall reaffirm this assurance to the state of Qatar and coordinate with allies and partners to ensure complementary measures of support. I cannot believe that anyone can still think that Trump is a decent, moral, upstanding president of the United States, that he's not just one of the biggest corrupt grifters in the world. It's absolutely astonishing what is happening. So Grok simplifies this. Trump promised to defend Qatar like a NATO ally if attacked. The Post sarcastically sympathizes with his supporters who oppose Qatar, as this contradicts their views. So this is back to Mehdi Hassan. Thoughts and prayers for Laura Loomer, Jonathan Levine, Dubovitz, Levy, and Douglas Murray, and the rest of the pro-Trump, anti-Qatar gang, because he has gone full pro-Qatar. And this is an Article 5 agreement with Qatar, seemingly merely on the back of, or because he has huge building projects going on in Qatar. He's also received a massive jet too. Absolutely unbelievable. So, there's no, as someone here says, not for Ukraine. This is not for Ukraine. They're not putting security guarantees for Ukraine. These are security guarantees for Qatar. Make it make sense? I can. It comes in the form of a Boeing 747-8 and billions in crypto purchases. This is a total mockery of our foreign policy and everything we're supposed to stand for as a nation. This cannot stand. Tommy Vitor says this is insane. Trump released an executive order saying that any armed attack on Qatar is a threat to the peace and security of the United States. The entire concept of America first and restraint and avoiding foreign wars is dead and buried at this point. Just I mean, I saved the worst till last. This is absolutely astonishing. In light of everything that's gone on in Ukraine, this is astonishing. No, we're not going to help Ukraine. We're not going to give them any more stuff. They can buy stuff from us. We're not going to give them. Qatar. Would sign an Article 5 security guarantee for Qatar. Yeah, for Qatar. Why the frick are you doing a security guarantee for Qatar? Well, Donald Trump, I'm building $5 billion worth of stuff there. And they give me a jet. And Steve Witkoff and his family are making a bundle of money off it. Oh, by the way, my family is Jared Kushner. I'm sure we've got crypto stuff with the World Liberty Foundation. Basically, all of us are making an absolute ton of money off Qatar. And so, really, if Qatar was attacked by anyone, then we might lose some money. So, quite frankly, just personally, that is, not America, just me and my mates. So, now we're going to nuke the crap out of anyone that attacks Qatar. Basically, just to keep me making some moolah. It's about the money. It's about the money. Jesus wept. The world is going nuts, and the person at the centre of all the nutsness is Donald Nuts Trump.